All right. Give me 1 second here. Let me pause this music. All right, my friends. My name is Bishop Holsonback, and this is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group, and I want to welcome you to the broadcast. Well, let me pause for 1 minute, my friends. Let me pause for. All right, my friends. All right. Tonight, tonight, we got Nazi Germany gave up their motherland to seek new lands beyond the ice ring. I pieced together tonight some very, very cool clips about how Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd, etc. The videos will explain everything that I run my mouth about. See, my friends, Nazi Germany gave up their motherland to seek new lands beyond the ice ring. Yes, my friends. And if you're having trouble with the flat earth theory, what's on the UN flag? I got it up here as my logo. What's on the UN flag? A flat earth map. Hello. All right, my friends. Sit back and enjoy.
It's a nice day for a walk, but it's always a nice day for a walk in sunny California. And if you're ever in the San Fernando Valley area, you should consider visiting the Japanese Garden, located in the Lake Balboa district. It's a beautiful place for a stroll and uses recycled rainwater for the lake and pond, which has a funny smell that you get used to. But despite the strange odor, it's a peaceful and relaxing place to spend the afternoon. There's lots of koi fish and turtles swimming around, waterfalls, manicured gardens, and blooming roses in the springtime, which make it look like a paradise. But besides the streams and fountains and mystical landscape, there's also one other unique feature of this tranquil gem situated in the middle of Los Angeles. And that's the structure that you see located to the right of the screen. Does it look familiar to you at all? If you're a fan of the Star Trek series, this is the location where they filmed the scenes with the Starfleet Academy on Earth, also referred to as the Space Academy, used for the education and training of individuals for service in Starfleet. The Academy motto was Ex Astris Scientia, in Latin meaning knowledge comes from the stars. The Space Academy was said to be founded in the year 2161, or established in some form before the founding of the Federation, or the United Federation of Planets, the name for the fictional interstellar government that sent Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and the crew of the Starship Enterprise on its mission of peaceful exploration. Commonly referred to as the Federation, it was introduced in the television show Star Trek and represented an interstellar union of planetary governments that agreed to exist semi-autonomously under a single central government based on the principles of universal liberty, rights, and equality, and to share their knowledge and resources in peaceful cooperation, scientific development, space exploration, and mutual defense. The total number of formal member worlds was over 150 in the 24th century, and at its height, it numbered 350 members and encompassed 8,000 light-years of space. Unlike its imperial rivals, who derive power from a single species subjugating other races, the Federation's various member worlds joined willingly and were equals in the Federation's democratic society. While Star Trek was a fictional series, there are those that believe it was based on reality, as there have been recent disclosures, especially regarding the events surrounding World War II, which imply that humanity has a parallel yet secret space program which was based on technology innovations achieved by nationalist Germany before, during, and after World War II, which has been effectively hidden from the general public for the past 75 years. The most common question I get is that if the Germans indeed had advanced technology, such as anti-gravity and flying saucers, then why did they lose the war? If the Germans had the ability to reach the moon and possibly establish a lunar base, then why didn't they use their UFOs to defeat the Allies? And that's a good question. And let me answer it like this. Even though Floyd Money Mayweather is recognized as the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world, with an undefeated record of 50 wins and 0 losses, a man of athletic talent, technical skill, and recognized as the best defensive boxer to ever step in the ring. But if Money Mayweather were to agree to fight against yours truly, and I had 20 other clones of me, that means 20 of me against one Mayweather at the same time, we would beat Mayweather in the first round. Mayweather is 5'8" and 150 pounds. I'm 6'4", about 230 pounds. And if there were 20 of me simultaneously punching him at the same time, that means 40 fists. His superior skills, talent, and boxing ability will not save him. And likewise, Germany absolutely had superior scientists, technology, and equipment, but they could not compete against the manufacturing capabilities of the United States. And having a few anti-gravity prototypes could not stop thousands more planes carpet bombing your supply lines, thousands of more tanks, and at least 10 to 1, if not 20 to 1, of all military supplies, including more soldiers. That said, the Germans knew the writing was on the wall halfway through the war, and while they were retaining hope until the end that they would find a way to develop their technology enough to turn the war around, they did not want to expose their technology to the enemy, and moved their most advanced developments to their Antarctic base, where after surrendering the German mainland in 1945, they defeated the Allies in 1946, who invaded Antarctica with 3 aircraft carriers, 4,500 troops, in what is still publicly called a scientific expedition codenamed Operation High Jump. course, the following year, after the Allies suffered a humiliating defeat in Antarctica, the world became aware of the Roswell incident, where a UFO, or flying saucer, crashed into the Nevada desert, and within a few weeks, the CIA was set up and the media informed the nation it was a weather balloon, while conspiracy theorists insisted it was little green or gray men, anything but tall Aryan men with German accents. From then on, UFO sightings continued, as well as a new phenomenon in the early 50s known as contactees, or people that claim to not only see round saucer-shaped craft, but interacted with people that claim to be from Venus or Mars, with striking features and often long blonde hair. There's the Billy Meyer case, a photographer from Switzerland that claimed to have contact with several beautiful aliens that started in the early 50s. While most people discount his photographs to be a hoax, the craft were round and disc-shaped, and the occupants looked Germanic. Then there's the George Adamski case, a Polish-born American citizen who also claimed to have photographed spaceships from other planets and says he met with friendly Nordic alien space brothers who also looked like typical Germans. While Adamski was also denounced in the media as a fraud, his photographs and video also resembled the round vril craft that leaked documents from the KGB after the fall of the Soviet Union showed to not only have a similar shape, but the same 3 round gravitational stabilizers below the craft. It's the same shaped UFO that was spotted hovering over Los Angeles in 1945 for several hours in the famous incident the newspapers called the Battle over Los Angeles, where not only thousands of people witnessed the craft hovering in the air, but thousands of rounds of ammunition were shot at it, seemingly having no effect. Keep in mind, this was during World War II, and while the craft did not appear to be armed, it might have been to show off the technology in an effort to bring an end to the war. Probably the most famous contactee case was the one involving Betty and Barney Hill, an American couple who claimed they were abducted in a rural portion of the state of New Hampshire, where under hypnosis, Barney Hill not only described the alleged extraterrestrials as looking like an Irishman, but he used the word Nazi, saying that the occupants of the craft were Nazis.
You say it's there. Did you say it was 1,000 feet away?
Oh, no.
1,000 yards?
It doesn't look that far. It's very big. And it's not that far. And I can see it tilted toward me.
Tilted?
And
what does it look like now when you say tilted? Did you see wings?
Looks like a big pancake with windows and rows of windows and lights of not light, just one huge light. And
rows of windows like a commercial plane?
Rows of windows. They're not like a commercial plane because they curve around to the size of this pancake. One person looks friendly. He's friendly looking, and he's looking at me over his right shoulder, and he's smiling.
Could you see him clearly?
Yes, I thought.
What's his face like? What does it make you think of?
It's round.
My name is Robert Sepper. I'm at the beautiful lake shrine of the Self-Realization Fellowship on Sunset Boulevard in Malibu, California. I hope you're enjoying the scenery. Welcome to another Atlantean Gardens episode. Lakes provide a critical habitat for an amazing array of plants and animals, establishing a viable food chain, including bacteria, algae, plankton, insects, fish, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Lake biodiversity varies in different parts of the Earth, but even though these habitats account for just over 3% of the Earth's surface, many of them support human life. One often overlooked part of the planet, which happens to have hundreds of lakes, is Antarctica. While most of these are subglacial, meaning below up to 2 miles of ice, Antarctica also has some relatively small regions that are clear of any ice and snow, and there's some surface lakes in these areas which were warm enough to swim and fish in. Even the lakes deep below the ice are teeming with life, such as Lake Vostok, the largest Antarctic lake, which does not get any sunlight and may have been isolated for millions of years. The reason is underwater volcanic vents eject minerals which sustain bacteria and plankton, which besides providing food to fish and other organisms, also create oxygen, another life-sustaining element which makes some of the most remote submerged parts of Antarctica theoretically habitable by humans. I say theoretically because of persistent yet officially unproven rumors that have been circulating since the alleged end of World War II that maintain many of the most technologically elite German forces did not surrender to the Allies in 1945, but survived in secret bases below the ice near the South Pole. It's relatively easy for many to dismiss this possibility because of the high degree of censorship, not only of the mainstream media, but also in Hollywood and academia, both of which also are subject to government propaganda in the name of national security. It seems logical that the subject of Antarctica remains largely classified, given the military defeat the Allies suffered in 1946 and 47 while trying to locate and eradicate any surviving colonies established by the Germans. Codenamed Operation High Jump, the United States and several Allied nations sent an armada consisting of 3 aircraft carriers along with support vessels, destroyers, submarines, and 4,500 armed troops, led by Admiral Byrd to Neuschwabenland, the name of the Antarctic territory annexed by nationalist Germany during the 30s. After the fall of the Soviet Union, maps have leaked into the public domain, allegedly obtained by the KGB during their capture of Berlin, which gave directions on not only how to navigate under the ice to reach these bases, but maps of subterranean, habitable landmasses, which the Germans refer to as Asgard, a mythical underground oasis which legends claim were inhabited by Nordic-looking gods. As the modern field of UFOs has recently gained a degree of credibility with validation of unidentified craft by the Pentagon and disclosures of lunar and Martian bases by a retired Israeli official, which I covered in a prior video that I'll leave a link to in the description. The subject has been around for decades and was diligently covered by journalists even before the advent of the internet as we know it. One such researcher was Mae Brussel, who had a radio program that broadcast from California in the 70s and 80s, and while many people will not be familiar with her work, I'd like to play an excerpt where she discusses some of the events surrounding World War II, including Admiral Byrd and his military invasion of the South Pole.
There's a situation that has been brewing for a long, long time, and I'm going into the history down there and the predictions of Admiral Byrd in 1946 and 1947 that World War III would start down in Antarctica by the Falkland Islands with Argentine, Antarctica, and in that area. He knew and said in a press conference, 2 press conferences in Santiago, Chile in March of 1947, again in July 1947, that World War III would be set off down in that area. Well, when Admiral Byrd got home, he was met by James Forrestal, the Secretary of Defense. 2 years later, Forrestal was murdered, thrown out of a window at Bethesda Hospital 2 months after he got a Distinguished Medal from Eisenhower. Forrestal was with Admiral Byrd on consultations. Byrd went down to see if Eisenhower and the Russians were correct that Adolf Hitler was down in Antarctica building secret weapons and so forth. All of the papers of Admiral Byrd are locked up top secret to this day. They're not available of what he saw, and right after he was met by Forrestal, shortly after that, Forrestal was murdered. And I'll give you the references on some of the books on the death of Forrestal and the meeting with Admiral Byrd. First of all, the Guinness Book of Records at the end of World War II, the greatest unsolved robbery was at the end of the war when the Reichsbank treasury was emptied of all its money and the bank vaults in Berlin were completely emptied out, and the headquarters for the World Monetary Fund in Basel, Switzerland, found that they had $15 billion in circulation that shouldn't exist. There was forged money. The code name was Operation Bernhardt. There were expert forgers. And so that this is the kind of money that could finance the operations that they're describing in this book. The prelude to the operations was that the money was available and somebody was making the equipment for these people that this book is writing about and manufacturing secret weapons for the future. Now, this book claims that Hitler planned far ahead to have a colony down in Antarctica. And if you buy the maps put out by National Geographic, 1957, there's a map of Hitler staking in 1939, 1937, his territory in Antarctica. He sent polar expeditions out. This book says the secret Nazi expeditionary force was headed by Captain Richter, Ritscher, and took place 1937 and 38, their first expeditions. They landed in the Queen Maud Land and established bases there. They took over 11,000 photographs for map purposes and had a swastika flag dropped every 20 kilometers to substantiate the German claim that they had this land in Antarctica. It was a terrain claimed by Germany itself for the first time, and they found warm lakes, an ice-free oasis, and an area, an unexplored area before that they gave German names, the mountains and the plateaus and so forth. It was free of ice, and there were warm lakes in this area, and other books that I have show the drawings. Now, added to the credence to these bases are the remarks of Mr. von Ribbentrop, this book says, at the outbreak of the war, World War.
All right, all right. My name is Bishop Holsonback, and this is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group, and I want to welcome you to today's program. All right, my friends, you was watching the video. You heard as well as I did that Nazi Germany gave up their motherland to seek new lands beyond the ice ring. All right, my friends, I'm going to start today with Warren Von Braun. I'm going to explain who Warren Von Braun is. All right, my friends, he was a Nazi SS officer. All right, he built the first V2 rockets in his 20s. On Warren Von Braun's tombstone, I have pics of it, states, the firmament is Yahweh's handiwork. All right? Why would a rocket scientist put this on his tombstone? You know, he built NASA from the ground up. You know, why would we turn everything over to Warren Von Braun? My friends, on his tombstone states out of Psalms 19:1, the firmament is Yahweh's handiwork. I'm going to state right now, I'll testify right now, there is no one getting past the firmament. You open up your Holy Bible and it says firmament, firmament, over and over in Genesis. But nobody knows what the firmament is. The firmament is to protect us from different realms and different dimensions that are above. The stars, the moon are inside the firmament. When this firmament opens, Yahweh will come with tens of thousands of his holy saints and execute judgment upon all. Nephilim culture and human beings will be judged for their actions. And the time is near, my friends. The time is near. All right, let's get back to Nephilim culture. Let's get back to the Nazis. Why would the entire world allow Nazi Germany to change the Hertz in 1942? The entire world did in 1942. They changed it to 432 Hertz. Why would we allow this? Because this is how they got in touch with the fallen angels. It's through hertz and frequency and vibration. You know, my friends, don't pay attention to me. Pay attention to Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla states, if you want to understand the keys to heaven, you must understand frequency, vibration, and hertz. This is what the Vril Society was all about. You've seen it in this video today. You know, my friends, the Vril, it was all about hertz and frequency and vibrations. All right. And this is how they got in touch with the fallen angels. You know, my friends, you really think it's Japan, China putting out this technology? They might build it, but they're not putting out this technology. It's the fallen angels who put it out. They leak it to the Fourth Reich. The Fourth Reich leaks it to the world. You know, my friends, what is the United Nations doing with the flat earth map as its logo? You know, the elite, they do not hide things. They put it right out there for you to see. It's up to you to comprehend. It's up to you to decipher. It's up to you to seek. All right, my friends. And this is what I have done. And I'd just like to share the information that I have learned. All right. Check this out, my friends. Admiral Byrd takes a fleet, naval. I'm talking aircraft carriers to you name it, to Antarctica. He gets his butt kicked. He goes into Argentina. He gets on live radio and states this. And then when he gets back to America, his buddy gets thrown out of a window, 16 stories. I would clam up too. There is, some diaries that Admiral Byrd is supposed to have written. But, things get pencil whipped, my friends. Just like the book of Enoch. Book 1 is the only book you can study in. And when it comes to Enoch, 2 and 3 of Enoch has been tampered with. And why they couldn't tamper with 1 is because it was already in the Ethiopian canon for thousands of years. It couldn't get messed with. Things have been pencil whipped, like the King James Bible. See, King James was a Freemason. He created the King James Bible in 1611. Him and Bacon. Some say Bacon was really Shakespeare. All right. My friends, we're set here in place to seek. All right. And that's all I'm doing today is giving you information. All right. We got a nice little crowd this morning. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in this morning. I want to welcome everybody. We check to see if there's any chats. Feel free to comment in the comment box. I'm using a new network. It's called Restream. I'm able to pop your comments up on screen, and we can act live. All right, I'm in my home, you're in your home, and we can interact live. We can fellowship, right, in Yahweh's name. All right, my friends, let's talk about 3 major lies that we've been told. Lie number 1 was to hide the Creator's name. They could not have the masses praying in Yahweh's name. So 1611, King James removed the name of Yahweh, replaced it with God and Lord. See, God, Lord, is a title, not a name. Our Creator's name is Yahweh. This is not a Jew thing. The Son of Man, his name is Yeshua. And when you're pronouncing a Hebrew word, it's from the right to the left. From the right to the left. Yeshua means salvation in Hebrew. And my friends, it's all about our salvation. Lie number 1 was to hide Yahweh's name. Lie number 2 was to confuse you about the cosmology, the plane that you live on. They had to confuse you. They couldn't have you knowing the shape of the earth, the true cosmology. NASA means to deceive in Hebrew. Imagine that. Let me pause for a second. Check this out, my friends. Lie number 3 was to confuse you about Enoch and who Enoch really is. Check this out. You got Enochian. You got the city of Enoch. All right, let me pause for a moment. All right, my friends, we had some dogs barking in the background, but I'm back. Lie number 3 was confuse you about Enoch. Because, in your Holy Bible says that Cain was kicked out of the garden, sentenced to the land of Nod. In Nod, he builds a city called Enoch. All right. We know there's a bad Enoch. We know there's Enochian. We know there's an Enochian calendar. We know there's a righteous Enoch, right? They try to confuse you about Enoch and who Enoch really is. And I'm going to tell you tonight, my friends, Enoch is seventh from Adam and Eve, Noah's great grandfather. Our apostles are quoting out of the book of Enoch 11 times. Jude, word for word. If our apostles are quoting out of the book of Enoch, apparently they are packing around the book of Enoch if they're quoting out of the book. It's not hard to piece together, my friends. And it's been my job. I've been down many, many rabbit holes, right? But it's my job to do this for us. And I'd just like to share this information. All right. Let's talk about Enochian mysticism, Enochian magic. Where did Enochian magic come from? Well, if the 200 that fell to Mount Hermon taught mankind, they surely went to the land of Nod and taught Cain. Could have been Lilith, but somebody had to teach Cain Enochian mysticism. All right? Cain taught the bad Enoch. Therefore, after the bad Enoch taught people like Tubal Cain, Nimrod. These are the people that created Enochian mysticism. It's the root of it. All right? Well, my friends, I'm here to testify. There's good. There's white magic. And that white magic is Yahweh. Yahweh's name. Because there's much, much power in the name of Yahweh. All right, my friends, much power. And if you build a conscious contact, a relationship with Yahweh, big things are going to start happening to you when you pray and meditate in Yahweh's name. All right, my friends, we've been lied to big time. We've been lied to. And lie number one was to confuse us about our Creator and His name. They could not have the masses praying in Yahweh's name. God, Lord, is a title, not a name. And this is not a Jew thing. This is about calling your Creator. You don't call somebody by their other name, right? This is the first lie. All right, my friends. So many people we got tuned in and where they're tuned in from. Got one person from my Facebook group. I want to welcome you to the program. And we got three people on my page, and we got three people on the YouTube channel. So that's 7 people total I'm seeing. So I'll keep running my mouth. My friends, once you build a conscious contact, a relationship with Yahweh, He's going to start blessing you abundantly. You're His babies. He just heard your name for the first time tonight. And for you to pray in His name, He's going to bless you. There's no doubt. My friends, I have a Facebook group called Seeking Yahweh's Word on Facebook with over 25,000 members. Please come join my Facebook group. I hear every single day about people's blessings from Yahweh, right? So please come join my Facebook group. October the 19th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, Derek Gilbert. Yes, I said Derek Gilbert and Gary Wayne will be on this program. So please come join me. And you'll be able to ask Derek Gilbert and Gary Wayne questions live. All right? I worked hard to put all this together, my friends. And the last time I tried to put it together, it fell through. It ain't going to happen this time. All right? I got I got a little footage of Derek Gilbert and Gary Wayne. I went ahead and broadcast it last month. But this in October, I'll have a full episode with Derek Gilbert and Gary Wayne and I. So please mark your calendars for October the 19th. All right, at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. All right, my friends. Let's talk about Enochian mysticism a little bit more. See, Nimrod was once a mighty warrior for Yahweh. He jumped ship and wanted to become a Nephilim. How does a human become a Nephilim? Gibberim, Raphaim, it's all the same thing. Your Holy Bible says Gibberim. How did Nimrod become a Gibberim? Through Enochian mysticism. This is how, my friends, through Enochian mysticism. All right, my name is Bishop Holsonback, and I'm here to expose Nephilim culture. All right? So please comment in the comment box if you have any questions at all. I got some I have merchandise. What the merchandise is to sell for is to help for me to pay for these to pay for Restream and other things that I do. I don't make any money out of these merchandise, but we do have a merchandise. Right below me here is a hoodie with "Seeking Yahweh's Word" across the hoodie. There's cups. There's all kinds of merchandise. So please go check it out. There's a QR code up on screen. So all you got to do is take your phone, hit that QR code, and it'll take you right to our domain. And our domain is seekingyahwehsword.com. All right, my friends. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in tonight. I want to thank the my YouTube people, my Facebook group, and people who are on my profile page. I want to thank all who's tuned in tonight. I'm gonna leave you with this. All right. If the righteous Enoch wrote books, so did the bad Enoch. And we call it Enochian mysticism. All right. If the good Enoch wrote books, so did the bad. It's common sense. All right, my friends, please bow your heads and pray with me. Yahweh, Father Yahweh, we, Father, offer ourselves to you to build with us and to do with us is thy will. Relieve us of the bondage of self, that we better do thy will and not our own will, and take away our difficulties, that our victories may bear witness over the people we will help today of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always, Father, and not my own. Father, there's people out here that just heard your name for the first time tonight. They're going to go home and pray in your name. And these are the ones that need to see your omnipotent power, Father. I ask you to put hands on them. I ask you to heal them, Father. I ask you to touch them, Father. They're praying in your name. These are the ones that need to see your omnipotent power. The babies, Father. All right. Amen, brothers and sisters. Amen. All right. Derek Gilbert, Gary Wayne will be on this program October 19th. Please come join me, my friends. Please come join me. All right, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna try to throw up one more video if it'll allow me. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in tonight. Amen. Hallelujah.
I wasn't kidding when I said that I loved Iranian food, and this Persian restaurant in Encino is known for its salmon kebab, which is not only well marinated and juicy, but is crispy on the outside from the fire. I wish I knew exactly how they made it. That said, today's fish got me thinking about trout, and how a man named Victor Schauberger raised a simple and profound issue when he wondered, how does a trout manage to stay still in a fast-flowing river? To help illustrate what I'm talking about, this is a lab video from the University of Florida of a dead trout in a tank of still water, which when flowing, you can see the trout start to move, not swim on its own, but the fish is being swum, so to speak, not on its own effort. There's no muscle-derived thrust, yet the body of the fish is being propelled forward. Schauberger observed that the occasional gentle sway of its tail is all that's needed to maintain its position in the flowing water. Not only that, they are very proficient at swimming upstream against the current. If one stops and thinks for a while, this is a really remarkable swimming accomplishment. And the trout's secret seems to be fluid flow dynamics and vortex theory. In other words, like how water flows down a drain or a tornado, vortices form behind stationary objects in flowing water. And due to the shape of the trout, the vortices start to form along the rear of its body. And Victor Schauberger explains that the pressure of the vortices push the trout upstream, and by opening its gills, the trout can increase the intensity of the vortices it generates and stay almost stationary. Of course, the dead trout that we observed doesn't have this control, so we just see it thrusting around. Of course, there's more to it than vortices when the trout is jumping out of the water or abruptly giving bursts of movement. But Schauberger was mainly interested in its ability to stay stationary and applied this to aerodynamics, developing his own ideas based on what he observed in nature. In Implosion magazine, a magazine released by Schauberger's family, he said that aeronautical and marine engineers had incorrectly designed the propeller, stating that, quote, as best demonstrated by nature in the case of the aerofoil maple seed, today's propeller is a pressure screw and therefore a braking screw, whose purpose is to allow the heavy maple seed to fall parachute-like slowly towards the ground and to be carried away sideways by the wind in the process. No bird has such a whirling thing on its head, nor a fish on its tail. Only man made use of this natural brake screw for forward propulsion. As the propeller rotates, so does the resistance rise by the square of the rotational velocity. This is also a sign that this supposed propulsion device is unnaturally constructed and therefore out of place. Victor Schauberger was born in Austria and was a naturally gifted inventor that developed a great love of nature. After becoming a forest ranger, he invented the log flume, an artificial brook that reduced transportation costs for lumber to 1/10 of the original sum. In a totally unique way, he succeeded to float heavy logs thicker than 2 foot on a thin layer of about a foot of imploded water. From his visions, he learned that water recharges itself with a natural magnetism through meandering, which means following a winding course or swirling. This magnetic-like power contracts the water molecules, causing them to densify and have greater carrying power. This device was successful, and his further research caught the attention of Hitler, who invited him to meet in 1934 and gave him considerable resources to develop alternative implosion-based technology, such as a device for natural heat and cold, and eventually the suction screw for what some call a, quote, flying submarine. While much of his work was for the SS and labeled top secret, the Americans did not seem very interested and did not utilize them during Operation Paperclip, where many German scientists continued their research in the US, and he was instead released by promising to cease all work on implosion techniques. Although Schauberger's work was innovative and groundbreaking in many respects, I do not share the same opinion that many have regarding his contribution to the alleged German flying saucer technology. While he is given credit on almost every documentary I've seen on the subject of German UFOs, the Vril and Haunebu craft were based on a different type of anti-gravitic technology that may have had parallels to his work on vortex fields. I just think he was a very intuitive inventor, and the disc craft were based on pre-existing technology, which some speculate already existed, as documented in some ancient Aryan texts from India, where flying vehicles called vimanas are described in detail, and through metaphysical research conducted by German occult organizations, such as the one headed by the medium Maria Orsic, who is said to have channeled information that led to the anti-gravitic prototypes. One researcher who spent much of the 1990s meeting with members of German secret societies, as well as the children of German scientists who allegedly worked on advanced propulsion technology and free energy devices, was Vladimir Terzinsky, a Bulgarian-born engineer and physicist who simply vanished around the time of the 9/11 incident in 2001. While Terzinsky's conclusions seem rather far-fetched among many of today's modern researchers, he was very meticulous and did a lot of legwork meeting with the actual people involved or immediate family members, and did not embellish what he found, but faithfully reported on the claims that not only did Germans make it first into space, but this included bases on the moon and Mars, with the outrageous claim that they had help from, quote, people from other worlds. He was not pro-German nationalist in terms of political ideology, so he was not aligned with Nazis in any way, yet he was honest about their technological achievements and keenly aware of the post-war effort to cover up some of these breakthroughs, especially in terms of physics. That said, I'd like to play a short clip where he interviews the daughter of an Operation Paperclip scientist and I was shocked to find this clip no longer available online, and believe his work must remain part of the public discourse, regardless of it being poor video quality and riddled with audio problems. So that said, let's have a listen.
The story is that the Germans that dug under the South Pole and built their underground bases before the Second World War ended, and that beat the hell out of Admiral Byrd's naval campaign against them in the winter of 46, the spring of 47. Actually, in 2 weeks they downed most of his planes and he retreated in disgrace. This huge German colony there, they moved hundreds of thousands of people before the war ended. By now, I've heard rumors that this is
This was a very mysterious buzz that appeared only over this portion of the tape, inexplicably why. So now I am basically repeating the story of the German underground South Polar colony. The wildest stories are that there is a city called New Berlin that has 2 million inhabitants, the center of the German colony there. This is what has been developed after the hundreds of thousands of people were moved during the Second World War. The German elite basically lost the European War in order to win the South Polar War, in secretly preparing for 2 years for the awaited American attack, and when it came they beat Admiral Byrd in just 2 weeks with their way more superior technology that they had there. They've been engaged primarily in space exploration, flights in the solar system and beyond, and genetic experiments to create a new super race, a new master race, to create their dreamed supermensch. I've discovered witnesses that have seen German documentary films from the World War II concentration camps of horrific genetic experiments, and in this large city that they have there underground, the city fittingly called New Berlin, they've been basically evolving the new super race that is quite more advanced and has very little in common with the race that lives on the other part of the planet. It's my intuitive feeling that the tall blonde aliens, the Nordic type aliens that have been observed in many little grey abduction scenarios, they could as well be Germans coming from their South Polar colony that are doing research together with our government in genetic experiments primarily on the American population in order to create a white Nordic type race. This is my deepest suspicion, and this is one of the biggest secrets of the intelligence community these days. So I don't know, this buzz that appeared on the tape could have been accidental, or it could have been just on the most sensitive place of the whole tape.
So my question is, do you remain with an impression that he may have been talking about a hollow moon with major installations inside, or it was just a dugout, tunnel and underground base, underground city type of a thing that the Earth government have done on the moon?
I kept thinking, when he said under the surface, I couldn't imagine what in the world would be under the surface. Oh, he says there's plenty of room. That seems like there was plenty of room, but I don't remember him saying anything in particular that it was hollow. He says plenty of room.
Now, about about his Martian trips, did he elaborate about being on the surface of Mars and inside Mars?
Yeah, he talked about it in the same breath with the moon.
Yeah.
And he says there were several of us that have gone up. I said, did you have to really be something special to be chosen? He says, we're all special.
We were all special. Did he mention how they went there? Did they go there by rocket? by a spaceship, by a flying saucer, I'm sorry, by some teleportation technology?
Well, at the time, the way he explained to me, it was incomprehensible. For it didn't seem to be a mechanical way of going from point A to point B. He said it's incomprehensible.
So this is basically the teleportation explanation, that a material object in point A is turned into beam of light and transported to point B where it is materialized.
I just thought of something, and first thing I said, and I was very liberated, I said, "Are there women up there too?" He says, "Of course."
You were probably asking about Earth women.
Yes, Earth women, yeah.
Which means that there are families and there are children being born there, and it's a full-fledged colony. It's a survival civilization already established on the Moon and Mars.
Or at least women scientists, or whatever they did, you know. I'm sure they didn't have women up there just to serve them coffee like they do in the offices here. Marina would love that.
And that the government has established such stations. This is all done. This was done with Tesla technology, probably since the early 50s or 60s. So, did he mention anything about a surface civilization living on Mars, an alien civilization living on Mars?
He seemed to feel. He used the analogy between, you know, the Moon and Mars within the same sentence structure, as if they were simultaneously together, the same bag of tricks at the same time.
Yeah, because with such planet-to-planet teleportation technology, whether you go to the Moon or to Pluto or Neptune, basically it's the same business. It's done in a second, in a split second probably. Now, to the underground of Mars, it's very interesting because Al Bilik, he was talking of him and his brother, Duncan, going to Mars, inside Mars, into huge underground shelters, underground doomsday shelters that were built by previous Martian civilization, now extinct and no more existing.
While such talk of underground Martian and moon bases seems almost comical today to most people, it is not a joke to all people. For example, the former head of Israel's Defense Ministry's space program for several decades, Chaim Eshed, who recently said, quote, "There's an agreement between the US government and the aliens. They signed a contract." And that there was a, quote, "underground base in the depths of Mars."
So this is from the former head of Israel's space program, Chaim Eshed, who says that aliens have been in contact with the U.S. and with Israel. What does he refer to? The Galactic Federation, that he says has been in touch with Israel and the U.S. He also says that Donald Trump was going to reveal their existence, but then basically got talked out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, he's 87 years old. According to him, he says he has nothing to lose. He's a decorated former Israeli general, former space security chief. He's been awarded a medal 3 separate times, 2 secretly, for actions that kept Israel safe. Clearly somebody who was regarded well by that government. Now, what he's saying is kind of crazy. He says that the cooperation there's a secret pact between the U.S. government and the Galactic Federation, that the cooperation includes a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives.
He claims that the United States already has military personnel in underground bases on Mars.
Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years. Not immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims. but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria. Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready and the aliens don't want to reveal themselves until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is. Well, the good news is that he claims an agreement has been reached between the US government and the aliens, a contract to do experiments here. There's also, he says, a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose. Well, so far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago, he did set up the Space Force as the fifth branch of the US Armed Forces. Well, we did ask the White House, the Department of Defense and Israeli officials to comment. So far, they have not responded to the NBC News request, and I wonder if they ever will.
Before you leave office, will you let us know if there's aliens? Because this is the only thing I really want to know. I want to know what's going on. Would you ever open up Roswell and let us know what's really going on there?
So many people ask me that question.
I know, it sounds almost ridiculous, but it's actually the real question I want to know.
It sounds like a cute question, but it's actually, there are millions and millions of people that want to go there, that want to see it. I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting. But Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
So you're saying you may declassify? Oh. You'll take it?
Well, I'll have to think about that one, right?
I'll
have to think. You know, I'm proud to have that German blood. There's no question about it. Great stuff.
The topic of German blood brings us back to the legend of the German Vril Society and a meeting held in 1919 at an old hunting lodge in Germany, where Maria Orsich presented to a small group assembled from the Thule, Vril, and Black Sun societies telepathic messages she claimed to have received from a likely extraterrestrial human civilization that claimed to be genetically related, existing in the distant Aldebaran solar system, 68 light years away, in the constellation of Taurus, near the Pleiades. One set of Maria's channeled transmissions was found to be in a secret German Templar script unknown to her. The late researcher Wendell Stevens tells us that, rather than a militant gesture of aid to nationalist Germans, the Aldebaran's contact had to do with free energy and a peaceful attempt at helping Earth humanity with less destructive technology which we were using for war, pollution, and control. The aliens, or space Aryans, reasoned that by offering free energy tech used to create affordable mass transportation devices and a new innovative generation of industries, that promoting prosperity and greater peaceful interaction between nations might result, thus diminishing violent wars, pollution, and spiritual degradation. Clearly, such a plan resonated with members of both the Thule and Vril societies, and their dream for a clean and free technology based on this alternative science harnessing Vril energy. Members of the Vril Society believe that Aldebaran Aryans landed on Earth following global cataclysms in antiquity, and when the planet became slowly habitable again, re-established civilization where they formed the dominant ruling nobility of various other early societies, governing through an elite bloodline and segregated caste system. Mixing blood was strictly taboo.
It became the greatest secret of mankind. It started ufology as we know it today. Indeed, there is a second humanity, an inner terrestrial race who had already built cities in the inner earth before the sinking of Atlantis.
What was it that Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole? Incredibly enough, in an official American Navy documentary film, we found footage of what Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole. He found giant fresh water, never freezing lakes, with areas around them that were free of any snow. And in that film we show footage of the Navy planes landing in these lakes. But even more so, he found, to his amazement, that his planes were disappearing very quickly. A lot of his planes were attacked by anti-gravity devices that were operated by the Germans there, by anti-gravity saucers. A lot of them crashed into invisible barriers and disintegrated in mid-flight. This is an indication that the Germans had already perfected the force field shields, and they were up and operational around the German colony at Neuschwabenland. When he was retreating, basically the whole operation lasted for 1 week. They started at the end of February 47, and by the first week of March they were through with the whole operation, and much earlier than scheduled, and they departed. And in an interview at Buenos Aires on his way back, Admiral Byrd made the incredible statement that the Third World War would probably be with an adversary coming from the polar regions of our planet, an adversary that has the ability to fly unobstructed from pole to pole. He was referring to the Germans at their South Polar colony at Neuschwabenland that were operating their anti-gravity craft with impunity and could fly circles around the globe, and of course would shoot out of the sky any of the attacking American planes.
The mediums were said to have also received precise information about the civilizations on the inhabited planets situated around Aldebaran, and a one-way trip was scheduled to depart towards the Pleiades to reunite. The women of Vril eventually joined with the Thule Gesellschaft and other organizations set up by the German government in order to construct an anti-gravitic flight disc known as the Gensitz Flugmaschine. With substantial financial backing, the odd disc-shaped machines were successfully constructed in Munich and secretly tested for several years. Thule wanted to help develop both a production combat craft and a functional Raumschiff, or spaceship. The Vril, by comparison, only wanted to develop the spaceship to reach Aldebaran and the Taurus constellation. Germany's successful development of functioning disc craft during the war is now, in my opinion, well documented, which I've already covered in numerous videos with examples from World War II, such as the battle over Los Angeles, Foo Fighters, and after the war and Operation High Jump, with incidents in Roswell and the 1952 UFO flyover Washington, D.C.